apartments. So we have these grouped apartments. I've done a little bit of work on them just last night, just to have something for you guys today. But so here we have one of the groups, and this is a kind of a very bad apartment scheme because it's only designed as a display of the groups. But all of these groups are the same, and they're all if I edit one, it'll edit all of them, and so on. What's going on with these bathrooms? Nothing. They're just displaying funny. Okay, now the one thing I've also done here is I've nested one group within another group. So if I press Tab here, you can see that I can actually select all the furniture separately to the rest of the group here. So I can come in here, for example, edit group, and let's say I want to put a bath in there or something. We got toilets here, all right. Do we have any baths in here? No. So let's load a bath in. Load. And we'll put in a plumbing, they call it now. And we just call it, is it fixtures? They put it under bathtubs. Put in a 3D bathtub there. And press open. So if I just orient that way and stick a bath in the corner there and press finish. So it's now generated the bath in all the other apartments in the scheme, even though you can see that this is 72 bathroom, and this is 56 bathroom, and this is number 10 bathroom. Even though they're not exactly the same thing, they're grouped. But it allows us to generate. You can either put the furniture in the same group, which would be one thing, or you can put it in a separate nested group. The nice thing about having a separate nested group is you can actually have different furniture layouts in the same type of apartment, which works, for example, in rental apartments where you might have a different price class, which is different furniture or something, or you might have like two single beds instead of double beds or whatever. So it's a nice technique to have. The other thing is, if I just turn this level of detail up to 20 here, you can see that initially when I sketched up the apartment here, I just used these modular grid lines as the guideline because they're based on the 300 module. They're 3.75 meters, which if you double up is 7.5 meters, which is divisible by 300. Therefore, it's part of the Western European construction module. So I did that initially, so they follow directly down the core center line of the internal walls here. But when we get to something like where there's an intersection between a external wall and an internal wall, if I just continue that along there, you can see we get this kind of awkward little corner here, which just looks terrible in an apartment scheme. So you have to kind of visualize it from the point of view of the resident. What looks better? I mean, these are not structural walls. They would be built out of either metal stud or timber stud, probably metal stud. So it doesn't matter that we shunt it slightly out here because we're not slaves to the grid. The grid is just a tool to allow us to plan the layout of the building, but we don't have to stick to it. If we move it out here, what it means is that we just get a completely flat plasterboard wall running all the way around the house, which is just a simple solution. It's a very simple apartment, so let's just keep it simple. But we get this weird kind of kink because Revit is so exact. It's saying, okay, this is a structural element here, and this is a structural element here. So we need to show how that works. Now that would make sense as soon as we start to draw in the actual studs in here, because of course you can have a stud that's halfway out from a wall. It's not a big problem. It has the added benefit of making the entrance hallway a little bit wider. So when you get into the house, there's a little room to take your coat off and all that kind of stuff. If I was to keep going with this, I'd probably move this storage area over here. So it's not, you don't walk straight into the storage area. But anyway, that's another story. So I set this model up. So it has a certain level of detail, 200 in it, just enough to see where the main materials are, but not showing any of the structural elements in the walls or anything like that. Okay, so that's kind of the changes I made to that. So if I just WT this and WT again. WT, if you don't know, gives you window tiles, so it'll just tile all the views on your screen at the time. So we have this kind of this notional idea that there's a retail area down here, which I haven't drawn in yet because In a mixed-use scheme like this, the most structurally complex element is the apartments on top, because they have the most heavy walls. They have the most requirement for structural walls between them. So the first thing you design is always the apartments. Of course, you have an idea as to how the grid of the apartments sits on top of the parking grid if you have a parking grid. But the most important thing is to get the main structural elements correct here. We can then afterwards we could probably divide this out where only the main structural grids are showing. So you could say, for example, that we don't necessarily need this element here because it's not structural. We could delete this one, and we could probably delete this one and this one as well. So we would have this one, and then these two, which are running through the main core structural walls. So then we have the main primary structural grid. We don't have to have thousands of grid lines. We just need to have enough grid lines to place the main structural elements. Later on, we'll take those down into columns or walls or whatever, into the retail area, depending on how we do it, and then down into the basement area underneath. Okay, so that's just a little bit of housekeeping on that. I think what I'll do is I'll just keep working on this model. I'll just work it up along with you guys as you're working through your models, just so we're on the same page. Seems like the best way to run the whole thing. Okay, now I'm going to shut this down. So we want to say set up a LOD 300 model because we now want to go back to this this idea I had here, where we have the main. God, I'm going to have to change that. Keeps putting me off. So we have the main LOD 200. This should say 200. I'm just going to put that over there. And this is our guide model. And now we want to make some of these elements here. And then later on, we're going to make a composite construction model. Just to let you know, you can insert or link the architect's model into, for example, the main package, site excavation and basement, or link it into the structural or whatever. You can use that as guidelines. You don't have to link it directly into here. But after you're finished, if you link the structural back into another model, it won't take the architect's model with it. It won't daisy chain, as they call it. So it doesn't. Link files, they don't just continuously link. You can only link one level of files into another level of files. So you can use it as a guideline file for all of these elements here. You don't need to delete it, but if you try and link this directly into another one, it will remove the architect's model. Okay, so that's kind of a nice way of looking at it. So if I was to set up a template for, let's say, a structural package here, I'm going to start. You can either start a construction template or an architectural template. Don't use a structural template until Livio starts using structural templates with you, because then you can transfer it to a structural template, because they act differently. They're a little bit strange, and they're good for analysis, but if you're trying to draw up stuff for a project, you're going to spend all your time struggling with it because they act differently to the one you're used to. So either use a construction template or an architectural template. So I'm going to set up a construction template. And let's save this. So I'm going to save it as project. I'll put it in the same place I have everything else, which is in the C drive, teaching, BIM, and I'm going to call it LOD 300, and I'm just going to call it structural package. Okay, so now we have a linked file. Let me just check something out. Yeah, okay. So now we need to insert the architect's model as the. Can you follow me on the screen here, or is it just completely meaningless? You can follow. You can kind of follow. Okay. So let's link in the architect's model. So I go into Insert, Link Revit, and there it is. There, LOD 200. And I'm just going to say auto origin to origin. Now that just means 000 to 000. So the two of them are the same. And press open. So now it's come in as a linked file. There it is there. Now what we can do is we have them linked 000, and that's fine. That works within an office if you're all working on the same project. But if you're sending files back and forth between different offices, often you want to have it linked according to geographical positioning. So assuming that you have the architectural model positioned geographically, and to calculate the sunlight and the project north and the true north and all that kind of stuff, we can just take all that information just by going into the manage. If I can read this, shared parameters. Oh, sorry, wrong one here. We want where's it gone? Is it coordinates? Acquire coordinates, is it? Yeah, that's it. Acquire coordinates. Sorry. Bit of a brain freeze there. Acquire coordinates. So then it says select a link project from which to acquire shared coordinate system. So then you just click on it. And that means the project we're in now has just been placed exactly in the same position as the other one. Okay, so it's always now in the same position. It doesn't seem like anything's happened, and nothing really has happened. But in the background, it's changed the coordinate system so that it's the same. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we need to copy the levels and the grids across. Okay, so let's start with the levels. So let's go into an elevation view. And in the elevation view here, we can see the active levels here. If I just roll this over here, you can see these are the active levels that popped up when we made the new construction template. So we don't want to delete level 1 because that'll delete the site level, but we can delete level 2. So let's just delete level 2 first of all because we don't need it. And then we can just take the rest of them and we can just move them wherever we want. So let's just move them more or less over here so they more or less line up with the other ones. And then I can just grab this one and stretch it across so they more or less line up. Don't have to be too accurate about it. All these are probably wrong values, but we can worry about changing them afterwards. You can see that it gives you these American terms. Top of foundation wall, top of slab, top of footing, bottom of footing. So we can play with all that kind of stuff. But it's good to have extra levels because we're into construction stage. You need a lot more levels in construction stage anyway. It gets boring setting them up. But we also need to transfer these levels across from the linked project. So the way to do that is to go to Collaborate, and then we go to Copy Monitor and say Select Link. Select Link, and then we can just click on the link here, and we get this little panel at the top here, which is all these kind of coordination settings on it. So this button here, which looks exactly like the copy tool on the usual Modify panel, if we press this, we can actually then select the individual individual levels. We have to do it one at a time, but you can see that the graphic is updating each time. It's changing the graphic to a construction graphic rather than a standard design graphic. Click on that, and then retail, and then parking. So we've transferred all the levels across. Now we can select and kind of get them to line up perfectly. And on this side, we can also get them to line up perfectly like that. So it looks like they're all part of the same project. Okay. So that's one thing. So we've got the Z coordinates, so the height information in the project. So now we just need the grid information, so we can locate things in the X and Y coordinates. Because we've taken the levels in, we don't have any floor plans of those levels over here. But because we've taken them into the project, they should be up here in the View panel. So I select View, I go to Plan Views, Floor Plans, and you can see here is all the levels that are not shown over there. You've done this before, I'm sure. Select them all by holding down the Shift key and press OK. And then they all turn up over here. Okay, so now we can go into residential level 1, and you can see that it's showing it as a very low level of detail, but the high detail is still in the project here, and that's going to be an important thing to have going on when we get to later construction modeling, where we can go in and actually divide all these elements up in the linked model. So Now we just need, let's just switch this back to 1 to 50. Now we just need the grids. So I'm going to do the same exercise again. Collaborate, copy monitor, select link, and then copy one at a time, nice and slow, all the grids. I'm going to do all of them because I want to show you something in a minute.
Can't select them by category?
Actually, I've never tried that. I've only ever tried to select it by selected by window, but it's possible. There's something precise about doing one by one. I kind of find it comforting because then I know exactly that I've got it. You know. So, but it's possible. That's possible. I never tried it. Okay, so now we got the grids in there. So what I like to do now is because the architectural model is just a guideline, I want to reduce its impact as you're working. So the quick way to do that is to set up a view template. So I'm going to set up a new view template by coming over here to the properties dialog and pressing on the view template, architectural plan, and just set up one called working view. So I just use this as working view. This is not something you would show to anybody, but it's just so the graphics is not overwhelming when you start to add layers on top of layers. So in the working view, what I do is I come over to the Revit links, visibility and graphics overrides, Revit links. I'm going to edit that, and I halftone it, and I put it on an underlay, so it's always behind everything. So it's gray and it's behind everything. Apply that, and then apply that. And you can see that it's still there. It's clearer on my screen than it is up there, but it doesn't. Everything that's in the project is now black. Black on white, which is at least it pops out of the screen. But at least you have guidelines at every level behind. Then you can go through and just apply that template to all the other views in the screen in the project there. And then finish. Okay, so that to me is a template for a level of detail model. It has the architect's model linked into it, and of course the architect's model is going to update and be modified as the LOD 200 model becomes more and more detailed. For example, if you go into the retail level, there's nothing there. There's just a couple of stairs. We need to start at least to show columns and walls and so on in here, just to have something to work from. But you can save that then. I've saved it as a structural package, but you can use that just as it is now, and everybody can take a copy of it, and that could be the base package because it has all the coordinate information, it has all the levels information, and it has all the grids information. It's enough to start doing a coordinated package either on the structure, the facade. You can start to work on services and so on if you want to get into that level of detail in third semester. And that's it. Okay? So I'll just pause that for. So what I'm going to look at now is assemblies. Because assemblies they're one of those really useful things that Revit does, but also frustrating, and they kind of work 80% fantastic, and then the last 20% just drives you crazy because they don't do the logical next step, But I'll just show you what that is right now. So first of all, I'm going to go into residential 01. And let's just turn up that 1 to 10 for some reason. Let's turn it up to 1 to 50 here. So let's say these are all the same groups. So if I click on this, you can see over here it says apartment 01. If I click on this one here, apartment 01. You can see that the change I've made is that in this one here, I've actually selected the, I'm going to select it again. I've selected the curtain wall. Oops, I didn't select it. And I've actually done this hide in this specific group option, the same way we dealt with the party wall last week, where we actually hid it in one of the groups, which is one of the very, very useful parts of groups that you can do. But because this is such a boring building, because basically it's just a it's just a tutorial about groups that I've turned into a building just to keep going with the whole thing. I'm going to add some kind of modeling to the facade just to show you how assemblies work. Okay, so I'm going to go back in here again. So let's say I wanted to add a box window to some of these apartments just to have some kind of difference in the facade here. The easiest way to do it is just to start drawing it. So I'm just going to make a wall here. And I'm just using this basic wall. And I'm going to make sure that the location line of the wall is core center line, which is the same as it is in this position here, which means if I draw from the grid lines, it's going to draw from the actual structural core of the wall, okay, which I want. And then I'm just going to draw it down, and then just draw it back again. So I know that this is following the grid line. It's way off, but that's okay because I want it to be a separate thing. I don't want to start joining it up to the wall straight away, because then it's going to cause all kinds of other join condition problems. I'm just drawing a detail line up here. I'm just offsetting it. I'm going to offset it by 1500. So we have a 1500 box window inside the apartment here. Something like that. Very simple modeling. Now, I'm using the same wall here just because it's there, but you can use a different wall. Like, for example, if it's a box window, it's probably going to be a steel structure or something like that, because that's easier to hang off a concrete wall than another concrete box. It's a lot less weight and so on. But let's, for the moment, we can change all that stuff afterwards because we're still only at level of detail 200. So I'm making this box. So the next thing I need to do, I need to put a floor in, and I want to put a roof in. So just very simply, I come in here and I find floors, floor architectural. I'm going to make a rectangle, and I'm just going to draw it all the way around it like that. Residential 01, that's fine, just accept it. We got a floor, and then we do the same exercise with the roof. Roof by footprint, make a rectangle. I don't want it to be a slope roof, so I'm going to click off slope. I just want a flat roof here. And I want it to be on the same level, but offset. I don't want it to be linked to another level. I want it to be linked to the same level as the floor. So it won't cause any problems if I move the floor from level to level. So if the roof was linked to residential 02, for example, and I move the floor to residential 02, it's possible the two things would just get squashed together. So I want to just make it on the base level residential 01. I'm going to give it an offset so it's higher than the floor of 2400. And then I'm just going to draw it inside like that, just to have a basic setup. And accept that. So let's have a look at that in 3D view. So there I have a box. So we made it a basic box. Now, just to add some complexity to it, I'm going to add a window. Just put a window in here. I don't really mind where it is. Let's make it a bit bigger. Let's edit the type, duplicate it, and I'm just going to, let's call it 1800. And we'll change the size of it from the rough width to 1800 as well, and the rough height to 1800, just so we have something that isn't too bad. Move it down a little bit. Move it a bit to the side. Okay, so then we have kind of the basics of our box window. We can continue to add windows to it or whatever we want. The thing, yeah, okay, I'll say it right now. The thing about this is, if we want to make this an assembly now, we can't make it an assembly if we use the curtain wall instead, or if we use the railing in there. For some reason, it doesn't allow those to be assembled with everything else, which is really bloody frustrating. But anyway, maybe we'll figure that in the future. Anyway, just to show you what I'm doing now. I'm going to select all this stuff I've done, and now we come up to this create panel here. Now here we can either make it a group, we can start to create parts from it, or we can make it an assembly. So I'm going to press create assembly. And it's asking us, first of all, it's choosing from all the categories that are in the assembly at the moment. So I'm going to make it a window, because I want it to be part of the window schedule. And I'm going to call it box window. Oh, god damn it, I get that every time. Box window, let's call it 01. And press OK. Now, it's been solidified like everything else. So it's now an assembly by itself. But also you can see over here this new, if you can even read that, but this new option is turned up over here, Assemblies, and now we have box window in here, box window 01, and you know it has it's now a kind of an entity in the project by itself, and that's fine. I could then go into the I could then go and click on this and right click, and I can say create assembly views. And it's asking what views of this assembly do I want, and I want all these views. You can delete them afterwards. I also want a wall schedule, a floor schedule, a roof schedule, and a window schedule. Press OK. And you can see if I double click on this or just click on it, all these views now have been created from the assembly. So what we have effectively here are level 4 drawings. These are BPS level 4 drawings. These are component drawings right here, and it's just generated it for us. So what I can do then, I can edit this. For example, it always does, it does an enormous amount of elevation lines. So I can go around here and say, well, I don't need to show where the plan views are coming from. So I'm just going to go and click those and hide them in the view elements. And then we can break these sectional views just so it makes it clear and graphically a little bit, graphically a bit stronger on the page here, because otherwise you're kind of overwhelmed with lines and information. And let's go into the plan view, and we'll do the same thing again. We don't need to show all the elevations because, you know, words are good too. Hide in view elements, and then we just break these lines. So we have an indication of where the sections are, but we don't necessarily have them interrupting the drawing. So then we can just go in here and we can start to dimension. So I can start to dimension up this box any way I want, you know, and continue to add information to this drawing. I mean, we're still at a very low level of detail in the view itself, but the important thing is we've actually decided that this box window is an assembly that's going to be created somewhere else. So this is perfect for prefabrication. So if you think about your project, you guys have a balcony that sticks out of your building, which to me looks like it should be a prefabricated element. In that case, an assembly would be one of the would be the best way to deal with all this stuff. So I go in here to the sheet they've made at the bottom here. They've set up a sheet. They don't seem to have a title block in here, but we can add a title block to it later. What kind of sheets do we have in here anyway? No, we'll worry about that later. But we can, just like any sheet, we can take the plan view and we drag it in, put it here, and then we can take the 3D view, put it in the corner like that, and then we can change the detail level, or at least the size of it. Let's turn it to 1 to 50. We can change the title block with lines, just a title block, because these title blocks with lines just are completely take up all the room. Let's just put in a section. Oh, that section or this section, one or the other. Let's just take detail section B, put it in here. Now, all this needs to be worked up graphically. If I had a title block in here, I thought there was a title block in it, but obviously there isn't. We could show a title block because it acts just like any kind of other sheet. But it means is that we can drag in scheduling information to do with the assembly as well, which tells us about all the information regarding the walls, the floors, the roofs, the windows, and we can modify those schedules so it actually does quantity takeoffs and it takes off whatever you want. If you then go back into the main project here, you can continue to edit this assembly and add material to it and you know, add detail to it and so on, and it will automatically update all the drawings that we've just made. So it's not a fixed thing at all. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if we want to now plug this into the building, I can just take it and then move it. Let's just make sure I'm moving it from the right position. I want it from the corner here all the way to here. And you can see that it actually modifies so that the structural elements line up together. So you have you still have a situation where the structure is lining up with the structure, so you know that it's going to be tied back in the correct way and whatever. Okay. So that's one thing. If I then want to make another one, I can just select it and copy it. Let's just copy it up by these grid lines. Let's say I want to copy it up to this one here, to grid line. Now the message I get here tells me edits caused an assembly to match an existing assembly type and inherit a new name. And what's that saying? If I translate that to English, what it's saying is that it's not making a new assembly type. This one here is still box window 01, and this one here is box window 01. They're both the same. But now we can schedule how many of them are in the project. So if you have 1,000 apartments and you've got 500 of these, it will keep track of them for you. But they're both, all of them are linked to these assembly component drawings. Okay? So that's the smart thing. The really smart thing is if I mirror this or change it in any kind of a way. Let's say I mirror it to the other side. I'll just very quickly mirror it here. It said, oh, we lost it there, but it said edits caused a new assembly to be made because it's, you can't mirror real windows and real walls. You have to create a new thing. So what Revit has done here, it's actually created box window 02 over here. So it's created a new assembly, a new set of component drawings. I can right click on this now and say create assembly views and generate all the views for this new type. I mean, it's more or less the same, but not when you get right down to the detail of where everything has to go. It's a different object. So any slight changes that happen to these assemblies, it will automatically create effectively a new product in your Revit project file. So then I can check this, and I can still move this new one into place. Here, like that. So now we have two types. That's it. It's pretty smart, I think. I mean, especially if we're dealing with component drawings all the way from the end. Now, that's why I keep talking to you about that. You need to have